Councilor at Large Thompson, and I'm Councilor Rudd. We have Clifford and Ann Gallagher. Would you take a moment and just introduce the department and give us a brief overview of the budget and what you do?
Sure. My name's David Clifford. I'm the Commissioner of Assessment for the City of Syracuse. We administer the assessments and exemptions for, well, it's 41,761 properties. The number has decreased because there's been a number of combines of properties. We maintain the tax maps. We put together an assessment roll each year for every property in the City of Syracuse that shows its land and total value and any exemptions that apply to that property. We do a lot of public relations, if you will. We deal with the public on a daily basis. People call us for information. They stop by to get information, to get their exemptions, to get their assessment reviewed, any number of reasons. And we deal with the public. We have people who, our people are trained to work with the public to try to solve their issues. The assessments that we put together make up the assessment roll, the taxable portion of which is what we are able to collect taxes based upon. So it's very important that this be done as fairly and equitably as possible. And that's what we strive to do. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Were there any substantive changes from year to year as you see it in your own budget?
Well, we've had a slight increase in both the total value of the city and the taxable portion of the city. Unfortunately, over time, the percentage of taxable property appears to be going down. Not quickly, but it is. In 2014, the taxable portion of the roll was about 48%. In 2018, it's about 47.26%. So,
I guess I was just thinking more about your roughly $500,000 budget for your department.
Okay.
And
well, yeah, we
went down about $35,000 from the last year. So, how would you describe what has changed?
We've done some changes in our personnel. We've realigned some of the people in our office. We're trying to take advantage of more digitized information, things like deeds. Every property that changes hands, a deed is filed in the county courthouse, in the county clerk's office. We get a copy of that deed. We have to make a determination as to whether or not the property should continue to receive any exemptions it might have, that sort of thing. We've been trying to do less with paper and more with the computers on these types of things.
How's that going? How are you transitioning from the analog to the digital world?
It's slow. We've been doing it for how many years now? We started with the.
I know there's a lot of.
There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, and we're sort of at the mercy of the county clerk's office. They've become more digitized now, more recently, and we are also. We're kind of following their lead, if you will, as far as deeds and recorded instruments like that that affect our assessment roll.
So is that kind of just the actual process? Do people scan in the documents, or is it actual taking the information and entering it digitally?
We have to enter the information into a computer system digitally at this point in time. They're working on programs where it'll be automatic. The problem with the automatic transfer of data is that nobody checks it. Right. And there is a number of properties that something isn't filed correctly. As a result of that, we correct that before it hits our roll. So it's kind of a check against false information being put on the roll. Because we either correct it before we put it on the roll, or we come to you later and correct it on the roll through the council.
The line for professional services, which is appraisal fees, is
That's
increasing.
part of it, yeah.
Can you walk me through that?
Well, when we get sued, it's an Article 7 proceeding in the Supreme Court. It's called a certiorari proceeding. This is after they've already gone to the Board of Assessment Review and grieved their assessment. They weren't satisfied with the determination of the Board of Assessment Review, so they take us to court. The process with that is that once it's been in court, the court will schedule an appraisal exchange date. So we hire appraisers, that's what is paid for in that fee, to do appraisals on specific properties. Typically, these tend to be fairly large properties. It's not really worth it to go to court with all the filing fees in court to do it for something that's a small property. So we're usually talking about, you know, some fairly large properties, large assessed properties. And what happens is we have an appraisal done, the petitioner has an appraisal done, we exchange the appraisals, and then if we can't come to a settlement, once we've got our appraisals, then we go to court, and the court decides. So that means that the appraiser has to appear in court, and they get paid an hourly rate for their testimony, plus actually trial preparation time. And then the court makes a decision, and that's what we're forced to accept.
So, but it looks like the FY18 projection is 20,000, and this budget's 45. So, is there like a big?
Well, I think also in that maybe the settlement amounts. I think no, okay, but
tax certiorari settlement amounts are in special objects of expense.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so unfortunately, what's happened in recent years is appraisal fees have gone up significantly. Anything over $10,000, it's my understanding that we have to do an RFP on. But we're getting bids for more than $10,000 for a single property. And these are large, complex properties, things like, the galleries, the newspaper building, some fairly large, complex appraisal problems, and that's why the fees are so high. So far, we've been able to skirt underneath that, but it's getting to the point where any really large, complex property, the fee is going to be pretty high. We normally do our own kind of mini RFP. We'll send out letters to all the appraisers in town that are qualified to do that sort of property, as well as ones in the area that would be interested in doing appraisals, and we get bids for them before we make a selection as to who the appraiser would be. And then we would bring that authorization to hire the appraiser to the council as the first step, which we've done recently.
Commissioner, a couple of questions. First of all, it says that the uncollected property taxes for the year, 1,198,000. Is that through when and
Councilor Thompson, could you just say what page so the rest of us could follow where you are?
Page 4.
Thank you.
I have a feeling that that's not really our department. That may be the finance department's.
It may, okay.
Councilor, that's a estimate that the Controller's Office asks all cities to put into their budgets,
Okay.
what the potential uncollected amount is for the year. We take into account, there's the tax prior year's tax fees and assessments that account in there also. So it's just a reasonable estimate.
Okay, well that works. But where I'm going with this is, so if what I'm looking at is I was trying to find out what portion of the land bank properties would you say are the uncollected portion of this?
Land bank properties are not collectible. They're
Before they become land bank properties.
They are before.
They are, correct.
before they become, they're transferred to the land bank, which is also authorized by the council.
Right.
They are considered delinquent, and that is considered collectible up until the land bank takes possession, when all those delinquent taxes are wiped out.
Right. And so when your office takes these, how many a year would you say that you're?
They've been averaging about 30 a month. So
400?
Yeah.
350-ish?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
It varies. Sometimes it's only 20 properties, sometimes it's more. But they've been going at a fairly good clip.
So I recognize this from the amount that we've had on the agenda and such, and so what I'm driving it is we're looking at the number of people that you have working for you, and I'm trying to figure out how much time this takes away from your people in order to do their work, and what that cost might be. So maybe we can recoup it from the land bank.
That's a good question, and I can tell you that every single person in my office spends a certain amount of time on land bank issues.
Okay.
The clerks have to obviously review the deeds as they come in. They have to put the land bank exemption onto the roll. The assessors, what we do is every property that's going to be seized and given to the land bank, we have them go out and reassess the property, because we want any potential new owner to start with a reasonable assessment. We don't, we want to make sure the assessment is fair. So that's the assessors. I have to sign all the letters, obviously. So my secretary has to process a number of those things as well. From my standpoint, it's the request letters to the council, and also the transfer papers I have to fill out for each land bank property. We've been able to accommodate the land bank, and we will continue to do so.
Okay, so I'd like, if you could, to put that into, send me a memo, or send us a memo, so that we would know.
Okay.
And obviously it's not going to be a steadfast, but if you give us an approximation of the amount of time and the cost for a particular, a normal property, and then we can extrapolate from there. Okay. And I guess that leads to the one that follows is your budgeted strength. Are all your positions filled, or are there positions that are available? Or
we have, I believe, one position available now. Our an assessment clerk position, I think it is. We just moved a couple of people around in other positions to try to make up for some people who had left our department, and I think we're one person down right now from our budgeted number of people.
So all 10 of your positions are funded?
Yes, as far as I know, yes. And
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Those are my questions.
Okay.
I don't want to jump ahead too far, but with the Board of Assessment review,
yes.
See here that we've got budgeted for the 5, but I believe we only have 4.
That's correct. Yeah.
Are we budgeted for or projecting to have all 5 filled?
We're going to try to, yes.
Okay. Because
yes.
I know you and I have had this conversation about trying to find a 5th person to fill that.
Sure.
I've gotten, calls from the folks on there hoping to get an additional person.
Right.
And, I'll have a couple names that I'll bring to you guys, because essentially it's our appointment that.
It's a council appointment, yes.
Yeah.
And
missing?
Yeah, there's one that's unfilled there.
The thing that we like to see is somebody who has a knowledge of real estate, I mean, that's really the most important factor. We've had people on there in the past that were not familiar with the real estate values in Syracuse, and there was some problems as a result of that. They were giving out reductions based on other factors rather than the value of the property. So.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Just one more on the land bank. When we take control of or when the land bank takes control of the property, what other things does this does the city relieves the water? Is it
basically all
bill that would exist?
I believe all the stuff that occurred prior to their ownership is wiped out. All of the liabilities, things like property taxes, sewer use charges, everything gets wiped out. And the land bank is exempt from everything that's on the tax bill, essentially.
Okay.
Now, I believe they do have to pay water bills going forward from when they take possession. So if there's people living in the house and they're using the water, they need to pay that even if the land bank owns it.
Okay, thank you.
How does what you do for the land bank compare to what you did for properties that were turning over before the land bank existed?
Well, the sheer number of properties is much higher than before. The practice, there was actually a number of different programs to dispose of delinquent properties in the past. There was one period under Roy Bernardi where we auctioned properties. We'd select 100 properties or so, and we would just auction them off. The problem with that process was all somebody had to do was come in and bid and they could get the property. There was no guarantee they were going to fix it up, they were going to rent it out, they were going to do anything with the property, and a lot of people were just buying them and flipping them. And that really didn't end up too well. It didn't really help further the development of the neighborhoods.
Do you think there's any metrics that would actually demonstrate what you're saying? So where they're like, because I mean, some of that still happens regardless, I would assume. And some of them are not getting fixed now. Just as they're sitting in the land bank instead.
Well, the land bank has certain caveats built into their contract. They have what they call a clawback provision, I understand, whereby if the property isn't fixed up within a certain amount of time, it reverts back to the land bank. That's my understanding. I don't know how well they're enforcing that. It's kind of a difficult concept to, you have to have somebody go back out and check each property. You have to, determine whether or not work's been done, and sometimes you can't tell from looking at it from the outside. So I don't know. But getting back to the process that we had prior to the land bank, the auctions were a one-off thing. We'd do one or two a year, and we did that for a certain amount of years, and then we stopped that. The process that we had all along was that we would come to the councils. If somebody was interested in buying a tax delinquent property, they'd let us know. We'd come to the council and ask for an appraisal to be done. We'd send an appraiser out. He'd put a number on the property, and they would have to meet that appraised value. So the city got paid an appraised value for every property that we seized and sold to a private individual or a company or whomever. So, I mean, that's the way it worked then. What we've been doing now is any properties that are tax delinquent that the city's getting disposing of, we've been selling them to the land bank for $1 plus the title fee, which is $150. So it's $151 is what the land bank pays us for each property. That's the council's prerogative as to how they want to do that. There are land banks all over the country. Many of them do it in different ways. Some sell for the value of the lien. instead of for $1 plus the title fee. Some get them appraised and sell them for that value. There's a number of different mechanisms out there for disposing of the properties.
This is a very imprecise answer, I'm sure, but what's the impact on the total assessed value of a property after it, we'll call it, graduates through the land bank, where, you know, it becomes a land bank property, then goes back into private, you know, ownership, versus the process prior to the land bank existing? Like, are you seeing properties that are more valuable because they went through the land bank process, or what's your experience with that?
I think it's about the same, except that the number of properties has increased. We're seeing a lot more properties being turned over than in the past. We'd only do a few dozen a year prior to the land bank. The volume was very low. So we're seeing a lot more properties being acquired by the land bank, and then the land bank is disposing of some of those properties. And it's our hope that they get fixed up, and, you know, it helps the neighborhoods.
This is the first time I've really thought we don't have any idea what the land bank's impact is, and how, especially when the land bank has this concept of like too much is coming in and they can't handle their own load, that we could almost build in a random assignment type thing where a quarter of the properties randomly go to auction and others go to the land bank, and you would like estimate the value add of going through the alternate process, and then we would really, and that would probably be a tool to advocate for like longer term state funding for a land bank if there really was evidence that it makes a difference. I mean, it's risky for the land bank, but I had never thought of that until this.
My concern would be it's more risky for the neighborhoods than anything. The idea behind the land bank is the fact that, you know, while it's nice that it gives us a little bit of teeth.
What is risky for the neighborhoods? I don't understand what you say.
Okay, well, let me get to that. I'm walking you through this here. The benefit of the land bank is the fact that it gives us teeth to be able to collect on delinquent taxes, like in the past we may not have been able to do. Now, there's some debate about that, but I think it gives us more teeth. Now, the issue is when it goes to the land bank and we go to resell it to somebody, there's a vetting process. There's a lien that's put on the property. There's requirements. There's a property that's, again, one of those areas where it's debatable whether it's Chad Ryan's or mine on the north side, where we actually were able to take back.
There's probably a map you could look at.
Yeah. No, but it goes back and forth where there's one side of the street is his, the other side is mine. You know, in any event.
I got you.
We were able to take that property back because it was neglected for so long. That after that year period, you know, they gave them like a 6-month extension and said, look, you got to do something, and they still didn't. We were able to take that back. If we auctioned that house off, there would be no repercussions. We would have no avenue to go down and
But we also don't know what would have happened if it had been auctioned. So I'm just saying there's like a gap.
So my point is that we do know what's going to happen, or that there's two ways with the land bank. Either you do what you promise us you're going to do, or we're taking the property back. So at least we know exactly what's going to happen.
I guess my reasoning for I support the land bank, and I do. We all have questions relative to the amount they have and whatnot, but my concern is more along the lines of, you know, we're entering into, my understanding is we're going to re-enter into a contract with them this year, and the mayor is looking to give some money and asking the council to support that for demolitions, which my understanding is going to be matched by the land bank, which is wonderful because we all want to get rid of those ones that have been sitting around, which did sit around for years under the process that existed before. Mm-hmm. But my question is to find out, you know, what services is the city actually going? Because sometimes when we get the land bank personnel here, we get the impression as if we're not really doing anything for them. From, you know, it's basically like we're giving them the properties and the rest of it is beyond, and we know that that's not so.
No, I can tell you that isn't so. I can tell you that our department, we do spend quite a bit of time on land bank properties, but not nearly as much time as the finance department spends, the law department, NBD.
And those
all of these departments.
Yes, and those are all departments that I'm going to get the same thing from, so that hopefully we can incorporate it into the contract.
Some of these departments have had to hire extra people just to deal with the land bank, and that's fine, you know. Yes. But my point is that you know, we've been able to actually handle the load that's been given to us from all these land bank transfers. You know, we've just through trying to streamline things and making things a little more efficient. We've been able to hang on that way. So, but yeah, I mean, it's and the effect, I think, the long-term effect of the land bank is yet to be seen. When they started it, they said in 5 years you'll know. Well, it's 5 years, so we ought to be knowing now. But I think it's going to take a little longer for the to really see the results of what the land bank can do.
I'm not sure how much effort goes into your major functions, the assessment and reassessment 55% versus the assessment records and exemption processing 45%, but would it make sense to have a land bank function for certain departments in the city, or is that too?
It might, yeah. I actually considered putting that in to my budget items, activity items this year, but I didn't really have a good handle on it at that point in time, but you know, we can try to make sure that we do have a handle on it going forward.
Go for it. What's that?
I just want to add something to the contract issue.
Yep, do you want to go to the mic, please?
I was the city clerk at the time the land bank was formed, and the land bank, correct me if I'm wrong, was formed as an additional tool to the other programs we currently had going. Yes. We had a not-for-profit program in addition to what the commissioner spoke about. We sold to home headquarters directly. We sold to a neighbor of a vacant lot. Let's say there's a vacant lot between two houses and the neighbor wanted to buy it. They would go to assessment and they had a vacant lot program. There were a number of programs to dispose of tax delinquent properties in the city. And when the land bank was proposed, it was proposed to add on to those programs, not to eliminate them. What has happened and what you might want to consider as a council is whether those programs should still be allowed to operate. Right now, for home headquarters to buy a house, we have to sell it to the land bank. They then mark it up and sell it to home headquarters. That was not the way the program was sold, and that was not the intention of the land bank. The land bank was supposed to be a tool that would help with the large number of properties we have while we continue to operate the other programs that were successful and that the public enjoyed. But I think the commissioner can speak more to that. But I think if you're going to do a contract, this is the time to specify whether you want those programs to be freestanding programs again or not.
Yeah, we did have a number of programs. Our housing partners, like Home Headquarters and Syracuse Model Neighborhoods and Time of Jubilee, were able to acquire properties for very little from the city, so that they could do what, you know, either the reconstruction or the new construction that they were looking to do. We had what we called a small vacant residential lot program. We would sell it if an owner wanted to buy the lot next to them that had been made delinquent for years. They could come in and if it was not a buildable lot, we would sell it to them at a nominal amount. We had a number of these programs. What happened once the land bank was formed was the decision was made to take all tax delinquent properties and turn them over to the land bank. Now, you know, that's something that you could look at as well. There are certain properties that are tax delinquent that, you know, maybe for economic development reasons the city wants to control, maybe for other reasons. So that's something else the council could consider.
Any other questions? Councilor Bay is not here, so I won't make up any more questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.